Their doors may be closed, but the St. Catharines Museum remains open. Despite the pandemic, the museum has 2 virtual events planned to recognize Black History Month. Sara Nixon will host the online sessions that begin February 16th with a talk that explores the myths of the Underground Railroad.
And my hopes in this lecture is to unpack those myths a little bit, give them a little bit more scrutiny in hopes that we can focus the narrative back on the Black experience and to elevate that Black experience in how we talk about the Underground Railroad here in St. Catharines.
Do we know how those myths took hold?
Yeah, so really the myths of the Underground Railroad, even the idea of the Underground Railroad being this really highly organized secretive network where there's conductors and safe houses and tracks. Even that's a myth that started in about the 1840s. We have abolitionists putting ads in newspapers, really promoting this idea of a railroad that was going underground in tunnels. And that was to promote their own activity. However, the actuality of this railroad didn't necessarily exist, and it wasn't as easy for slaves to access abolitionists, access these routes as we've come to believe in the stories of the Underground Railroad. So it's really pop culture, popular culture, fiction like Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, folklore like music such as Follow the Drinking Gourd. These songs perpetuate these myths and stories because they're really fun to tell and they paint such vivid imagery in our heads. However, again, they take us away from the agency that these Black men and women had to escape.
Is there a story you're going to share that you think maybe deserves that spotlight of kind of personal triumph rather than sort of the more grandiose picture that we all paint?
I don't want to give too much away in the lecture, but I definitely will be focusing on more specific stories and also giving a little bit more scrutiny to the myths that do exist about the freedom quilt, for example, that had symbols, giving messages, helping slaves escape, or the Follow the Drinking Gourd song was said to have escape instructions in it. So I'll be scrutinizing that a little bit more and counteracting that with stories, written accounts of slaves that actually did escape and how they had to rely on themselves to do so.
The museum switches from Facebook Live to YouTube for their second event on Sunday, February 21st, which is a virtual tour of their Follow the North Star exhibit.
And I take you on a guided tour of the galleries where we explore the Black experience here in St. Catharines more specifically. I think the legacy is fascinating. I find like stories such as the BME Church that was built by freedom seekers in St. Catharines. In the building that stands today was built by freedom seekers, their own hands, their own carpentry skills, and that still stands. And that church is still a hub for Black activism in the Black community today. So that legacy really draws me to the history because it wasn't like Black history just stops when slavery ended in the States and members of the Black community went back to the United States. No, there's families that continued to grow their roots here and opened businesses and attended schools and joined organizations and made contributions to the town and the city that we still feel today.
Is that tour interactive at all?
It's interactive in that I will be opening for discussion and questions. Unfortunately, it can't be as interactive as it would have been in person, but I will absolutely be bringing my bubbly self to the tour and making it as exciting as possible.
Pre-registration is required and is as easy as emailing museum@stcatharines.ca. In Niagara, you're watching The Source.